All right, hello and welcome to another Let's Talk video. So, with the gaming industry all up in arms about Microsoft dealings and Sony dealings, PlayStation dealings, whatever. Um, yeah, let's go over the whole industry from top to bottom, where the money comes from, where it goes, and essentially just in kind of a broad sense, because we could be here all day talking about how the whole industry runs. But let's just go in like a nutshell, if you will, of where big chunks of cash is coming from, where it's going, which from shareholders to development teams and everything in between. So uh this is going to be again in a broad sense across Xbox and PlayStation. I don't really know how Nintendo. I'm thinking Nintendo probably runs pretty similar also, but Nintendo is pretty well, is a Japanese company for the most part. I don't know if they have. I don't really know too much about Nintendo, if they have like an American branch or any of that stuff. And PC, there is so many different ways that business goes down PC. It'd make your head spin because there's so many different storefronts and there's so many different companies that are investing in development teams, whether it's indie or triple A's that's exclusively for PC and all that. So what I really know about is Xbox and PlayStation, and that's what I've heard developers talk about and everything. So you'll have a lot of something else I just want to go into too really quickly is you'll have a lot of information from website news sources that are claiming to have leak information and rumors and this and that. What they're really doing is they're going into the conference calls that happen. So, like shareholder meeting calls that are public knowledge, and different conference calls that will talk about what's the earnings reports and what's job application stuff that some companies need. You never know which company is going to be talking about what, so they end up those accounts that you see on social media a lot. They will first, they'll pay attention. They end up making a lot of ad revenue and everything off from doing posts and such around. And then, of course, the IGNs, the Game Informers, Game Rants, Game Spots, all those, they pick up on those news stories. Well, they make them into news stories, really. They're just picking up on that information that those guys are getting from conference calls, and they're making a buck off from it. Basically, it's like mainstream media, as you would hear of like a CNN or a Fox News or something, where they get their information from somebody else, and then they make a big old story about it, and you hear about it. So I also want to preface this video with I have never officially worked in the industry. I have been a beta tester. I have had been on these NDAs and such for testing out different games and different alphas and such over the years. The latest one I think was Skull and Bones. When that was in like a beta testing phase, I've sent word of my findings of what I thought and everything about games to the companies like Capcom and such, and EA over the years. It's always a fun time doing that, but most of my knowledge of how the industry works is just because I love to watch developers talk about the industry. I love to hear like you have like a developers press conferences and such where they go there and they do like their little TED talks, and or they have like an award show or something where all the developers get together and they do podcasts or interviews or whatever the case may be, and you end up hearing how things run. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's jump into how the industry works. Again, kind of broadly speaking overall, because again, Xbox has a very different game plan mindset than PlayStation does. Same thing with Nintendo, same thing with the PC market and indie development studios and everything. So, the one place where all the money comes from, though, and you can say it's like BlackRock or whatever else, but the shareholders. So that's your first place where your money is all coming from, is your shareholders. So the shareholders go down to what we call the parent company, which would be either Microsoft or Sony. Um, and Microsoft and Sony, you got to remember, they don't just make gaming stuff. They don't just make consoles. Xbox has Windows. They have Windows based PC, or well, Microsoft branded laptops and PCs and such. They have phone for a while. Windows is a major, because Microsoft is and always has been a kind of software first company. Um, and so that's what Bill made the company off from, was taking code from another company and, really kind of stole the code and made it into their own. But yeah. So the parent company of Microsoft, the parent company is Sony, and of course Sony also, once again, they make TVs and and consoles and like Vizio and all that stuff. Like Sony owns a bunch of different Sony Pictures, for instance. So they get money from shareholders for all these different departments, both companies I'm talking about, whether it's Microsoft or Sony. They get money from their shareholders to do all these different development studios. So the parent company, again, of we'll say Microsoft and Sony, and then like I said, like Valve, I'm pretty sure, because they are their own owner, they have shareholders also, which is Steam. On the PC front, Epic has their own set of shareholders because they are their own parent company. So if it's a parent company and it's not a affiliated company or something like that, like ZeniMax was the parent company to Bethesda until it was bought out by Microsoft. Now ZeniMax is technically a subsidiary. Bethesda has development studios. That's getting a little ahead of ourselves. But so the parent company, they are going to push money. So the parent company is going to be asking the shareholders for money to push down into development studios. So we'll say dev studios. So the dev studios, of course, are all the logos that you see whenever you turn on a game. It is the development studios are the ones that, whenever you're hearing devs talk about their title, their game, the project that they're working on. So the devs are coming up with basically a project of like, hey, can we get this project greenlit? And normally what ends up happening is the development studios will ask the parent company. If the parent company likes what they're seeing, they'll ask the shareholders. And again, shareholders will go, sure, or maybe not. And then that amount of cash will come down to the dev studios. So when the parent company is asking for the money to begin with, what they're actually doing is kind of, they're getting a loan from the shareholders. Could be $10 million, could be $5 million, could be $20 million. Who knows? So it's basically estimated cost of, what's going into the development of the studios. Are they upgrading the development studios? Are they, is it, they're trying to upgrade the cameras so they can go from, 4K to 8K textures to really make the character models that much more detailed? Is it that they might try and do like like Sony, PlayStation Studios, I should say. Sony has invested a lot in mocap studios for a lot of their PlayStation studios, or you just go to a Sony Pictures lot and you use the mocap studio there, the same place that they shoot, movies on. There's a lot of different ways that companies can do all that stuff, but it all costs money. It all costs millions of dollars. Any one of the mocap suits that you see, if there is, if they are doing mocap and the scene has 6 people in it, that's possibly $6 million worth of equipment just on the people with the suits on. Then you're talking, millions of dollars of cameras all the way around, getting the action, getting the shots of, capturing the motion. And then you have also voice acting contracts and, the list goes on and on. So the dev studios are asking, again, the parent company is asking the shareholders for money. So basically, the money down to the parent company, and then the parent company is pushing the money down to the dev studio. So again, there's a lot of, just to get something greenlit, you have a lot of money going back and forth. And, the difference between Microsoft and Sony, though, is we'll say we'll say Game Pass, PlayStation Plus tiers. So, uh, maybe we'll make that a little bit more of a plus sign. So here's where the two companies very muchly diverge off from one another. Is Microsoft is really just, they're zoning in, they're targeting on their Game Pass, and they're targeting into, you buy a license and you basically make the money. So you can ask the shareholders for the cash to end up buying a license. Then they flip that license into profits, hopefully, if the game does well. But a lot of times what you'll end up seeing is like the pie cash that a lot of developers talk about that they get from Microsoft to publish or to have Microsoft be the publisher of their title. That is a bag of cash that they're getting from shareholders. And so you get that one-time cash right there, and then Microsoft starts making all the cash after that off of Game Pass, because if you end up buying the game or you do the DLC and everything, Microsoft is making all that buck. It's not really the developers, because Microsoft is now trying to pay back those shareholders of the cash. Now, PlayStation, what they're doing, it's a very different approach to it. This is where, again, like the two companies have gone in a very different split way of doing this. So what PlayStation is doing is they're actually they're investing in their development studios to build a development studio so they can build new experiences, new games in the future, and not have to rely on buying a license of a third party, although they are still buying some licenses of a third party. A lot of times what they're doing is they're buying a license, and then they are kind of more or less creating a development studio, but they are they'll you either hear partnering or buying out, which, yes, in a lot of ways they are buying the studio out, but the resources that they have into the studio, which the resources is, of course, cash, but also it could be, if you need a mocap stage, if you need, extra voice talents or something like that, then you have Sony Pictures, and you have, again, all those lots and everything that you can actually use, or animation teams that Sony Pictures is working with too. A lot of times you'll have, Sony Pictures animators that work in CGI a lot. They will help out making cutscenes if it's a CGI cutscene. So then again, it's just like, the ecosystem of Sony is working together to try and build something brand new, where the ecosystem of Microsoft is, okay, let's just buy this thing and hopefully it's successful. And then, if it's, whether it's successful or not, Microsoft a lot of time is going, well, we don't want to invest in making another one, so that's why we have all these studio closures happening. So again, it's a very different system. So PlayStation Plus tiers, what they're doing there, and this is PlayStation Plus tiers where it's like the essentials and the classics and all that stuff. So the classics, a lot of time, what you're noticing on there is PlayStation already owns it, and they're just kind of it's not really remastering it, they're just making it available on current day hardware. So if you don't want to have to go out and buy, say, a PlayStation Classic system or something, like extra hardware, you just want to play everything on your PS5 or even your PS4, you can do that. For video game preservation, Sony's trying to make it as clean of an experience as possible there. And then when it comes to Game Pass, you do have some game preservation happening, but mostly, again, it is just for Microsoft to try and make some money off of it. Now, what is Microsoft trying to do with all this money? It kind of seems like they're trying to push it back into like Azure AI. They're kind of trying to take that money and push it back into like Windows to build up Windows 11 to have, like Copilot and again, AI features and that stuff and everything. And who knows, maybe in the future, Microsoft Studios might have movies out or something. I mean, it was actually Microsoft that was pushing for the Fallout series on Amazon, which, again, say what you want about them working with entertainment outside of just gaming. It's kind of what they're up to, what they're doing. Nintendo's kind of doing the same thing too, with like the Mario movie and all that. But yeah. When it comes down to the development studios, so a lot of, from what I've heard over the years, a lot of people think that when you as a consumer Um, when you're buying either a Game Pass or a PlayStation Plus tier, that you are helping fund um, development studios, which is not 100% true. It's not 100% accurate. So let's go into game devs. So, game devs, there's so many different departments on this. There's a couple different ways that they work too. So, as a game dev, you might be working for one studio. Let's say this is a studio here. You might be working for this one studio, or you could be a contractor, and there's a bunch of different studios in a network, and you could end up working for all of them as a contractor. You work on one project, and then in that way, you have a lot of your composers, your music composers. They can go and work on multiple different projects at once, get multiple different paychecks. They're not tied to one studio, one game. They can have multiple different jobs. Now, if you are buying the game and you are essentially paying off the debt that was from the shareholders, giving the money down to the parent company of Microsoft and Sony, this is the reason why, if you like a game, go out and buy it. I'm big on try before you buy. If you don't like something, you shouldn't feel guilty in buying it. But if you try something and you really like it, go out and try and pick it up, because what you're doing is you're actually you're kind of paying the developers in a lot of sense, but also you're helping the developer, because the developers get a part of the probably cash from the shareholders. But what a lot of people don't realize is that if there is not enough cash to go for DLC, there's not going to be as much of a paycheck to go around for the developers if the game doesn't sell well, of course. And a lot of the hard work that they do could just be totally taken out and canceled. The project could be canceled before it even gets going, or they make a game, they ship it, and another thing too is not even just DLC, a live service. So, terribly handwriting, I know. But live service. So live service is a whole different beast, because the DLC still comes in there, but it's in microtransactions. So what the parent company is trying to do now in this situation with a live service game is they got so much money to just make the game, but now the parent company is now trying to basically make profit, because they've already gotten the pie cash from the shareholders. That's whatever, it's done. No, as long as that core game gets the core thing that makes it run. So say like a Fortnite, for example. A lot of the reason why they do crossover stuff, or bringing in Marvel characters, DC characters, Alien, Predator, what everything that they bring in on this stuff. The reason why they do that is because the licenses that they are basically renting out to have all that stuff, like a WWE DLC pack or whatever in the Fortnite shop. All those licenses are, it's like it's one chunk of the change is going to pay for the license usage fee, and then the other chunk of the money is basically, if it sells really well, it's paying off the developers' hard work on all that stuff. Because if the developer, no matter which way you go about it, the developers are working on that live service game on and on and on and on with every single development that that gets made. And as they are working on all this stuff, again, there's a chunk of it that is paying off the license fees, but then there's also the other chunk, which can be a very big lump sum of money that is being made off from the purchases of the microtransactions. That's the reason why everybody's like, well, I hate microtransactions. Yes, maybe you do. And there's a lot of times that because the shareholders didn't give a whole lot of money, or maybe the parent company asked for too much money, that then the dev studios, whatever the case may be, and again, it goes by a case basis. There's not every single one of these contractual agreements they're for different, pots of cash. They're for different different agreement types and everything, for the length of how long they can have something in the storefront, for instance, or the usage of it. Whether they can, make a different costume color or something. Because a lot of time, yeah, it's like even the costume color of like, it's like they can't have, there's probably something in a licensing agreement like the alien in the xenomorph in Fortnite. You can't have a white version of the xenomorph or something. It's because that was never in a movie, so it's not canon. That could be a thing. Um, so the live service module, again, the reason why you see a lot of live service games go under is because they're not performing on the DLC. People aren't buying in-game microtransactions, so there's no way to pay off, the server usage. And that's the other thing too, is the game devs, they are buying servers, and if those servers aren't getting paid off for, then the game goes under. It goes down, the servers get shut off, and that's it. And that can be, so they could get a lump sum from the shareholders to keep the servers online. A lot of times what they're looking to do is they're looking to keep those servers online by way of DLC and microtransactions. So if this sells well, they got something to pay off the server fees with and do server maintenance and all that stuff. Which is the reason why, sometimes leaks can be a very bad thing for a live service game, because if people aren't really feeling it, they just put all these devs just put all that time and effort into making that DLC, and people don't like the DLC. That's, time wasted basically. And time is money. It's the business. It is the business of it. So, for the most part, that's pretty much how all this stuff works. When it comes to hardware, also, because this is basically all the software side. When it comes to hardware, it's a very similar thing of, shareholders give the parent company enough money to make the hardware that they want to make. And then, basically hardware sales, like you're always going to take a hit on hardware. So if you make a new controller, if you make a new console, if you make a new peripheral, like a VR headset or something, you're going to take a major hit on that. But the software is where it pays off for everything in the long run. The software is always the end goal with this. So if they make a PlayStation VR 2, they need to be selling games on that thing, or they're just, that's it. PlayStation VR 2 is just kind of dead in the water after that. If it doesn't, if the, it's not even 100% about hardware sales either. It's about the software sales, because again, they always lose money on hardware. So that's another thing that I would say too. If you buy something like a VR headset, make sure and buy some games or something that goes along from the official storefront for it, because that's showing the parent company and the shareholders in the long run also, that there is some influence there for money to be made. There is no influence for money to be made. It's done. It's dead in the water. So yeah. Again, it's a business at the end of the day. So that's what's your number one priority is keeping the shareholders happy, and the number one priority for the parent company is making products that will sell and not cost the shareholders fortunes. That's kind of just the way the business is. Funny enough, politics works a lot like that too, with the politics especially in the U.S. politics, because the U.S. runs a lot like a business. And so what we're seeing right now with all the crazy stuff going on is a lot of people are waking up to realize that, Microsoft is playing bad politics with their development studios. Their way of running the studios and trying to flip studios for profit. And there's a lot of controversy that a lot of the PC market is trying to push at Sony, because Sony is doing their own sort of business strategy of, so one of the things that I would say when it comes to Sony is, remember that Sony, it always tries to keep the PlayStation network as clean as it possibly can after it was hacked and taken down, and it cost them so much money that now, I mean, Sony is Japan, and Japan is very tight and tight security on all their stuff. that's at least how they try, like, try like hell to do, is to keep tight lip of security on all their projects. So yeah, it makes total sense of the reason why Sony is doing what it's doing. If they don't want to have problems with PlayStation Network, and if there are certain companies that the internet connection isn't that great, um, or if there are certain countries that are maybe pirating games a lot, or using like private servers and everything, and maybe also hacking or doing all that stuff, that's just extra money that Sony has to put into network security, and also they have to fork over cash over the PlayStation, publish games into anti cheats and everything. So you know if those countries have a high tendency to do all that stuff, why would you have it in their in their territories? Then you have to push more money into all that. That doesn't make any sense. So just if you just drop it out of that territory. And that's the other thing too. I see a lot of people go, oh, Sony is wanting you to pay for PlayStation Plus. That is not the case. They were adding a new feature into the game where, okay, so you have your game and it's running well on PC. Well, PC has no connection to PSN. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to actually make a connection from PC over to PSN, so then you can get all your trophies in there. And now all of a sudden your PSN account can earn trophies, which actually, if you have the PlayStation app, you can actually make reward cash back off from the PlayStation app. So in all honesty, what they were doing was the PlayStation account was actually kind of a cool thing for PC to add more features onto the PC, and everybody just started just getting upset and crying over it. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of everything. I think I'll wrap up here. I pretty much covered everything. There is so much more that you can go in depth on, when it comes to like the reason why Game Pass works the way it does, the way PlayStation Plus is set up the way it is, and just different, the way that they run different studios and all that stuff. That could be a whole separate video. Maybe it will be in the future, I don't know. But for right now, again, I just haven't felt like anybody really put together in like a Blackboard type of a teaching video of like how the industry actually works. Again, it's just a lot of money being passed back and forth. So we'll leave it there. If you like anything in this, hit that sub button. You can like, sub, bell notifications, all that good stuff. You know what to do. And yeah. Hopefully you learned something about all this. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for stopping by. And as always, I will see you next time.